Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and today I want to continue covering the last races of this weekend in Spain, Ruta del Sol, and over in Portugal at Algarve. Now, let's get to Ruta del Sol, where it's about 185 kilometers, so 115-mile race. But really, it's the last climb, about 4.5 kilometers long, really steep, really narrow, and it's going to crest at the top with about 30 kilometers to go. And so this kind of stage could change the tactics a little bit because it's the last day of a week-long stage race. And so when we see that there's a 7-rider group up the road and they only have 2.5-minute lead on the group behind, being led by Movistar and Intermarché, we know what today's MO stage is going to be. This break of riders of 7 are going to get brought back for sure, and it's going to be whether or not if it's going to be a field sprint after this 4.5 kilometer super steep climb to the finish with 30K to go, or on this 4.5 kilometer climb, are all the GC favorites going to attack Tadej Pogačar and try to make something interesting happen on this last climb and then try to hold off UAE team Emirates or attack them someplace along the finish? That's what I'm thinking when I'm sitting on the couch. So Movistar pulling, Intermarché pulling makes total sense because the last day of a stage race, when you haven't won anything goes riding on the front, especially when you've been battling UAE team Emirates throughout the whole first 4 days and been losing every day to a strong Tadej Pogačar. Everything is okay when you see tactically with these 7 riders up the road. Now, in that group of 7, you have Kevin Colleone, not Don Colleone, like I like to call him all the time, from Jaco Alalula, but you also have Dries de Bont from Alpecin, Eric Feder from Iolo Cometa, Pascal Enkhorn from Lotto, Xavier is there from Escatel, Dries van Gissel from Total Energies, Vincent van Hemelen from Flanders, Team Flanders that is. They're all up in the front and driving it hard, but none of these guys are small little GC guys, and they got a steep climb coming up, as I've already told you. Now, when we get into 35 kilometers to go, that's when the brake blows up, and it's Dries de Bont, the Alpecin rider, and he has got one foot in the grave, but he is putting on a display of force here and determination, really trying to get up over this climb so that he could be in the front group or still continue to stay up the road and try to win today's stage. Now, near the summit of this climb, going all the way up, it was UAE Team Emirates that's going over the top. And near the summit, he's only got about a 20-second gap on the favorites led behind, but it's only a 30-rider group. Now, the question is, are they going to pull back Dries de Bont and drive it with Movistar on the front and then try some tactics? Because Bahrain Victorious has some numbers in there. We see going down the descent that Mate Mohoric, of course, threw in his descending skills again to try to get away from the group behind. But that didn't last very long. Movistar pulled him back. And then it's basically the Movistar show all the way into about 5 kilometers to go. That's when you really want to tune in if you don't have a lot of time. But if you want to be real nice to Dries de Bont, who deserves a little bit of your attention, go back to 9 kilometers to go, right before you got caught from the Movistar-led peloton. And then fast forward up to 5 kilometers ago when the action got really thick and heavy here, coming in the finish of this stage down at Ruta del Sol. It's curb to curb right now, and things are getting interesting as all the teams are fighting to be at the front. When we come into just about 3 kilometers to go, I want to point one thing out. It's Dries de Bont, Alpecin, that's pulling his team up the left side, trying to get him back up to the front. So they got a shot at winning the final sprint here on today's stage 5. Now, one other thing to point out, shortly after that, just a couple hundred meters, it was Pascal Enkhorn. He was in the break of 7 too, and he's pulling up his lot of riders up at the front. So these 2 riders are going deep, been in the break all day, and still trying to be a super domestique. Just about 2.2 kilometers. Now it's time for UAE Team Emirates to go to work. We'll see them come up on the left side there. Movistar, who've controlled this race from start to finish so far, but they're going to lose it as we come into this roundabout. Left side, UAE Team Emirates go with Bax leading the way with 3 of his teammates on the wheel. And Tadej Pogačar is one of them, sitting second position. On the left side, on the right side, that is, going through the roundabout, Movistar's flying, but as we see when they come out of the roundabout, Bax has got the lead for his UAE Team Emirates. And now the question is starting to be answered on which rider UAE Team Emirates are going to do the sprint for, because Tadej Pogačar sitting second wheel. On his wheel, there is Covey, who's won some sprints and done some quality racing here. Last year, he won the uphill sprint. Today, we got a bit of an uphill sprint, so they're going to do the sprint for Covey, what it looks like at about 2 kilometers to go. Sitting fourth wheel, there's Tim Wellens, though. Up front, Bax is doing a solid job. Got the whole field lined out. They got a left turn coming up. But just before the left turn, if we take you back to the pictures we see on the left side of the UAE train there, it's Tim Wellens trying to move up in front of his sprinter, Covey. He does that, but that's going to cost a little bit of energy before we go into this left turn. Now, just before the left turn, we see just on the right side, UAE team member's backs pulls over, and this is going to let Tadej Pogačar start taking the lead, flying into this left turn. Tadej Pogačar in the race leader's yellow jersey goes through the turn, looks back over his shoulder, realizes he's got a little bit of gap on Wellens. Remember I told you Wellens had to go through the wind back there when Bax was up front going full gas. Now Wellens has got to close the gap. Tadej Pogačar's got to ease off the throttle a little bit, and we still got over a K to go with only 3 UAE team members riders on the front, but one of them is Tadej Pogačar. I'm still thinking this is a little bit of a bad tactic here if you want to try to win the stage. Nice to help Covey out, but can you get Covey all the way to the finish with 1.5 kilometers to go coming out of the left turn? When it looks like Tim Wellens, his main lead-out sprinter there for Covey, is struggling to close the wheel. Now, we see it's Pogačar still on the front. He's drilling it. One thing they got in their ace pocket, when you look all the way back, Bahrain Victorious is way back there. Ineos is lost back there too. They're sitting like 15th, outside the top 10 for sure. But Movistar's looking somewhat okay because they got 2 guys near the front here still coming in just behind the UAE Team Emirates train. Now, Tadej Pogačar decides to punch it, and I think he's going deep. He looks like he's throwing down hard. We go through the roundabout for just about 500 meters, and when you look, the only riders able to make any position gain back there is Edvald Boasson from Total Energy. He moves up onto the UAE-led train there as Movistar riders start opening up gap. And behind, when we look at Ineos, Omar Fraley is making some gaps too. He's moving forward, not backwards, but Movistar, who started in good position, they're starting to lose. Fraley has moved up, and now he's locked onto the wheel. Edvald Boasson up front with about 300 meters, 250 meters to go. Pogačar's pulled off. Once he pulls off just before the roundabout, Tim Wellens starts a sprint, but Tim Wellens is out of gas. He does about 50 meters. And that's going to leave Alessandro Covey in the wind with about 225, 250 meters to go. Covey starts to punch it. Edvald Boasson can't hold on. He opens the gap. Then we see Omar Fraley just accelerate again, come up onto the back wheel of the UAE Team Emirates Covey rider. And as Covey starts his sprint, you can start seeing he's starting to fall apart and the wheels are coming off. And now Omar Fraley does a big acceleration on the left side and starts to go into the final right turn with about 100 meters to go. He's got just a little bit of gap on Covey, then accelerates hard all the way to the line to take a big stage victory here at stage 4 for Team Ineos. Now, this is a big victory because they've been getting beat up by UAE Team Emirates, winning the first 4 stages plus the general classification and just dropping everybody in their wake. This was a really nice setup move here for Ineos to win with Omar Fraley, who, if I remember right, on that first stage, they had him attacking with 80 kilometers to go on that first stage. Now he still has legs at the finish. Now, one thing tactically about today's race, when we're talking about UAE Team Emirates, I was sitting there the whole time thinking, why don't you lead out Tadej Pogačar? Why don't you just bring Tadej Pogačar, especially with an uphill finish, and let him do it? Remember, all of his other teammates, Covey, Bax, Tim Wellens, Rafael Majka, George Bennett, all those guys have been riding the front all day long. And I remember back in the day doing Redlands Classic for Webcor. When the race ended, the very next day, I wanted to go out and do a super long easy training ride because we had nothing but more races coming up and there was no other time to get in a long 4 or 5 hour training ride. And all my teammates thought I was crazy. But all those guys had been riding the front throughout the 5 days, 6 days, 7 days of Redlands that year. And I hadn't been riding the front, so I've been fresh. Same as Tadej Pogačar. So when he punches it, he's got to be a little careful because his teammates back there are going to be a little bit in the red. And honestly, this late into a long 5-day stage race, I think with Tadej Pogačar's speed, the big tactical mistake was not leading out Tadej Pogačar instead of Covey. Covey looked a little bit tired once he got to the front, and of course Tim Wellens had to do some big moves in the wind before 1.5 kilometers to go. So you got to keep in mind your guys, when you're leading them out, they have to get to the last corner with some freshness. And when Tadej Pogačar is accelerating from 1.5 all the way to about 350 meters to go, whatever it was a big acceleration, putting everyone in the hole and just left Covey in the wind a little bit too early with Tim Wellens losing that form, and Tim Wellens has been nothing but fantastic and spectacular throughout this week of racing here at Ruta del Sol. I just think the tactics of today's finish was the wrong tactics to employ. Tadej Pogačar, marvelous, winning the general classification. Santiago Buitrago finishing third, rounding out the podium, and second, of course, is his teammate Mikel Landa, who jumped over him a couple days back, but as Bahrain victorious 2 and 3, they stay on the podium. Movistar come up. Oh, kind of snake eyes, right? Enric Mas did put on a show, no doubt about that. Today, a lot of work. They just didn't have that big punch at the finish of today's race. But it was an uphill finish, so you're tall order when you're asking their sprinter, Ivan Cortines, to be able to get up there and be able to beat when someone like Tadej Pogačar is pulling on the front. And this is a solid finish, I'd say about 4% going up to the line for that last 900 meters. Good racing down there, Ruta del Sol. Congratulations, everybody. Some knucklehead tactics throughout it, but I loved watching it all. Now let's get over to Portugal, because we had a big debate on yesterday's Beyond the Coverage of whether or not if Tom Pidcock's patching up some of the mistakes they made that he said in his interview with Ineos, winning yesterday's Mountaintop Summit finish, if they had patched it, if they had fixed all that stuff, or like I said, was it just a patch job? We'd have to find out till today. Now, Remy Cavagna is in the hot seat when I'm really paying attention to the individual time trial there, and he's got a solid time of 29 minutes and 38 seconds. But guess what? Stefan Kuhn, FDJ, he's been flying out there, and he'll cross the line 4 seconds faster than Remy Cavagna to put himself in the hot seat. And you got to ask yourself, because he's about a minute and 7 seconds, I think it was, on the general classification, is his time going to be good enough to be able to beat possibly Filippo Ganna, Tobias Foss, who's just in front of him by about 30-35 seconds, and could even jump up further. Now, I didn't really think he had a chance of taking the general classification, but this is a solid time. And now behind, when we start seeing all the top 10 guys leaving the ramp, we got to ask ourselves, can Filippo Ganna do a solid time when he leaves the ramp? Can Tobias Foss, the current time trial world champion, what's his time going to look like? Well, the next rider coming across the line is going to be Tobias Foss, and his time's not going to be good enough to overhaul Stefan Kuhn as he crosses the line. He's going to finish about top 5 or something like that on today's stage when it's all said and done. But when we go back and we start seeing Ganna is flying through the chicanes. This is a beautiful time trial course. It's got uphills, narrow, it's flat, it's straight in sections. But when we see Filippo Ganna, he's going through the tight chicane, going to the right, almost rubbing the fences. We see him set up for the left turn. As he comes through the left, same thing. He's cutting as tight as he can. Once he exits that left turn, guess what? He's all the way on the right. Looks like his bike's just about going off the road. He keeps it on and pops the bike back. All of a sudden, he's flying on the pedals, going up over the hill. He's doing some solid time, but the first 2 time checks, he's been behind Stefan Kuhn's time. When he crosses the line, though, he's about 10 seconds slower than Stefan Kuhn. So with this time, all of a sudden, we know that Filippo Ganna is not going to win today's race because Stefan Kuhn's still in front of him. But we got to ask ourselves, is it enough time for the general classification? So this TT stage was actually a pretty exciting one to sit down and watch, is certainly when we're talking about from Remy Cavagna all the way to the finish. Now, we go back, we start seeing the other guys leaving the ramp, and of course, you got to pick out the Portuguese rider, João Almeida, because he's a GC rider, and he looked like the biggest threat in my book to possibly win the general classification, but he's not having a solid time. When he crosses the finish, he's way off of Filippo Ganna's time, so we know Filippo Ganna is going to be in the hot seat still. Now, next up, coming across the line, and we got Danny Martinez. Martinez has been flying. The cameras didn't spend a lot of time on Martinez from Team Ineos, but when Martinez crosses the line 16 seconds off of Stefan Kuhn's time, all of a sudden we know Danny Martinez is in the hot seat to win the general classification because he didn't go fast enough to beat Filippo Ganna, but he was already ahead of him on the general classification. Now we got Ian Van Wilder out there. He's doing a pretty good show. When Van Wilder crosses the line, it won't be enough to stay in front of Danny Martinez, but it will keep him up on the podium classification. We got one more rider to talk about, and it's the race leader Tom Pidcock leaving the ramp. He takes off. He's in the bright yellow yellow jersey, hard to miss, race leader. What can he do on today's stage? I told you guys yesterday, I have no idea what this kid can do in the individual time trial, but he can certainly control his bike. As we see him flying through the left turn, he loses the back wheel. He's up on the dirt embankment. Good thing he's a world cyclocross champion. He keeps his TT bike under control as it's sliding out from underneath him all over the place. Good thing the dirt hillside there was ramped for him as he used it as a berm, slotted back onto the road, gets back on the pedal, but he's going to lose almost a minute and 30 seconds on Stefan Kuhn's time at the end of today's stage, and he's going to drop from first on the general classification all the way to 7th. With the time there of Tom Pidcock crossing the line, we know Danny Martinez wins the general classification here at Algarve, and his teammate Filippo Ganna finishes second. Now third, Ian Van Wilder had a solid TT and will stay third on the podium. Best of the top 3 riders starting today's stage. So a great ride by Ian Van Wilder, the young kid from Quick Step. Well, everyone else had mixed up throughout all the general classifications. When we're talking about the top 10, you had solid GC guys like Tobias Foss move up in the top 10 general classification to 5th. And of course, Filippo Ganna moving up to 2nd with his teammate Danny Martinez win it. Now, Danny Martinez gave a great interview afterwards because he said they were always thinking about Filippo Ganna as winning the time trial here and the general classification. And I got to ask yourself, if you're always thinking about Filippo Ganna winning the individual time trial here and the general classification, yesterday's tactics go back to being a little bit strange. Remember on Beyond the Coverage yesterday, I said there was going to be a big deciding factor here today. Danny Martinez and Filippo Ganna basically filled in all that to patch everything up and then cement it so that Ineos looks solid here at Algarve winning the general classification. And let me remind you guys, because you watched the beginning of this video, they won with Omar Freire there at Ruta del Sol. So they got to win both in Spain and here in Portugal. Congratulations, Ineos. Great day of racing for them. Tadej, Pogačar, UAE team members. We already know that was great racing. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Hope you guys like the videos, and I'll see you real soon.